Kia ora and welcome to the Literacy Connections Morphology resource. So this video is just going to be a quick overview of the resources. So firstly, we've provided a scope and sequence. So just like the teaching of spelling, and we would see that morphology would be probably taught at the same time that you'd usually be teaching spelling, that's where it would slot in. We need to be guided by a scope and sequence. So the New Zealand curriculum does have specific examples for the morphology to be taught at each year level. So we've initially been guided by the New Zealand curriculum. It's been quite detailed. And then also we know most schools in New Zealand are using Liz Kane's The Code for their spelling, so we've also been guided by that. There is a very comprehensive resource in reading science in school, so that's also offered some extra ideas for morphemes and a great guidance too with Deb Glazer's Morpheme Magic. So predominantly the morphemes have come from the New Zealand curriculum and also just supplemented with those other ideas from those resources too. So here is just a sample so you can see, roughly how that sequence is working. So we've got our very simple morphemes in year 1 and 2, simple suffixes. We're introducing prefixes there in year 2, getting a little bit trickier in year 3 and 4, starting to introduce those base words. Year 5 and 6, the focus is starting to be more on the base words and more complex prefixes and suffixes. And then when we get into year 7 and 8, there is that increased focus on those Greek and Latin roots, as well, as you can see with those cron and graph and phobe type morphemes. So that's just a screenshot of what the scope and sequence looks like. So it's been arranged year by year and guided by the New Zealand curriculum. So we've provided you with what the morpheme is, the definition, and then some example words. And then I've just pulled out there the year 6, just so you can see that that's getting a little bit more complex as we go through the school. So the morphology lessons have been guided by the idea of morphology helping us to decode. So that's in the read section. Morphology is also helping us to spell. So there's a spell section, and then of course it's also helping us with vocabulary and understanding meaning. So every lesson has those 3 components: read, spell, and meaning. So that's where it's sort of slightly different to a spelling lesson, where the focus would be on read the words, write the words, so reading and spelling. There's that other factor of meaning supporting vocabulary development. So there are 12 slideshows that we've provided as templates. So as you can see, there are a number of morphemes we're covering in the scope and sequence. So we've provided these 12 quite comprehensive slideshows as a template guide for when you're planning your own slideshows. So there is a mixture of prefixes, suffixes, base words, also a mix of year groups. So, find a template that kind of makes the most sense, and you can basically use that as a guide for creating your own. Also, we have worksheets provided, and this time there is a worksheet for every morpheme right through from year 0 through to year 8, so that when you're teaching these lessons, there's always that you do independent work provided with the worksheet. And the focus for the worksheets is on spelling. As you can see here, we've got completing the word sums to support spelling, and then also looking at meaning. So there might be some support with either paper or online resources to help with that. So essentially, the slideshow becomes the I do, we do sort of explicit instruction component whole class, and then you can move to the you do independent work with the worksheet. And then as the class is completing that worksheet, then you could be potentially freed up to work with small groups, or you might find the worksheets fit into a different time of the day. We also have a PDF of the answer sheets for the worksheets provided as well. There is a copy of this word mat, so that's, occasionally used in the slideshows, but it's also quite a handy follow-up task. We'll explain that in another video. And we have word cards for the resource as well that are basically like sound cards that you would use for spelling. So these morpheme word cards have the morpheme on one side and then the definition and the examples on the other. So it's basically just taking the information from the scope and sequence and adding them to a card. So that can be added to your sound pack. If you're working with small groups, that's really helpful so that we make sure that the morphemes are being reviewed as well. So that's as an A4 PDF, so with cutting guides. So if you print double-sided onto just light A4 card, you'll be able to cut those out and have the morpheme on the front and the definition and examples on the back. Okay, so that's just a summary of the resource. There are other videos explaining how the lessons work and how you would use these resources.